to episode 10 of the METALBIRB Podcast, and today I'm joined by someone that I've been wanting to talk to for a while, because not only is she in a kick-ass band, but she also seems like such a chill, down-to-earth person, and I love chatting with people like that. So, welcome, Monique Pym from the band Reliqa. Am I saying your last name right, Pym?
Yeah, you got it. Thank you for having me.
No worries, how are you? It's morning right now in Australia, isn't it?
It is. It's about 9 a.m. It's funny, you were saying like, oh, I'm just going to get a coffee. I was like, okay, cool, morning activities. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is an evening coffee for you. I like your style.
I know.
Yes.
I'm weird like that. I've been drinking coffee since I was like 7 years old. It's not like I'm proud of it, but I drink too much coffee.
God.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, before we get into questions, I want to mention how I discovered your band and the reason, like another reason why I want you on this podcast, right? So, you know, I first discovered Relica on Twitch like 2 years ago with the song like Mr. Magic. And that song just like made an impression on me. Like, I'm like, you know, I check out so much music, obviously. And on Twitch, people are constantly showing me new songs. And that song was just like, this stood out. It was eclectic. It was fun. It was catchy. It was instrumentally extremely intriguing. So yeah, like as soon as you dropped your new single, Bearer of Bad News, I'm like, I have to check this out. And that song was also really good too. Like it felt like a little bit more like metalcore leaning. And so I was like surprised by that, and I was still into it. But like, you know, after that, the whole EP came out, and that EP became my EP of the year. I don't know what I am. Oh, chef's kiss.
Feel so flattered. Very humbled.
Seriously, for people that are listening that haven't checked out Relica and is just interested in the conversation, like, it's progressive metal that is just creative, amazing instrumentals and vocal hooks from you that are actually like very, very hooky, but also you can understand like everything you're saying. Like the enunciation is so clear. I love it.
That's a pretty big thing for Australians, I think. It's pretty interesting. I hear that a lot, and I'm very glad that people tend to enjoy like my diction. But I don't think I'm isolated in that. I'm pretty sure that a lot of Australian vocalists have this pronunciation that you can actually I don't know. I think it's because it sits the Australian accent rather sits somewhere in between British English and American English. So I think it's where those two like westernized worlds collide, and people are like, I could actually understand what you're saying. It's like, yeah, dude, Australia just built different.
You know what? It's so true, because even thinking about like deathcore vocalists like CJ from Die Artist Murder, I feel like
yes!
I can understand him a little bit better too.
It's a great example. Even Alpha Wolf, like your front runners in metalcore, Void of Vision. I feel like there's just something in the diction that really, I don't know, comparing it to a lot of American bands, just bands up in the Northern Hemisphere, it's a bit different, yeah.
Man, that's actually so true. Speaking of bands from the Northern Hemisphere, you just came back from a nice couple shows with people that are local to my country, Spiritbox, and and Make Them Suffer. Look, I need to know about these shows, how they went, how was the bands for you, and everything that happened.
So, firstly, it was only one show.
Oh,
as sad as that is, it was. Australia went absolutely mental when they announced it, because first a Knotfest was announced, right? Because Spiritbox coming down for their Australian debut, that was Knotfest, so just 3 dates: Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. And it felt very exclusive. It was very exclusive because, you know, 3 dates for their first time down under. And I think it was a couple of bands like first time down under, Slipknot even, for the first time in 7 years or something. Obviously they've been here a bunch, but naturally Knotfest had to come with its side shows. So Spiritbox only announced one side show. Everyone absolutely blew their lid at it because people might have been expecting a bit of a tour to follow it or something like that. But Knotfest is a huge event, and I went to Knotfest. It was brilliant. Like, got to see Spiritbox from out in the crowd as opposed to side stage, so that was cool. Got to see all the angles, and they perform absolutely beautifully. But anyway, onto the show. So one show, it sold out so quickly, naturally. It was special for us for a couple of reasons. I mean, firstly, it's fucking Spiritbox. Not only is it Spiritbox, but it's Make Them Suffer. We love Make Them Suffer. As you know, we worked with Sean for safety. We're in fairly close circles with them. They are beautiful people, and they're even better performers. And Alex, seeing Alex live for the first time in Make Them Suffer was really special too, because I'd seen them with Booker a few times, but Alex is just. They're in their final form now. Like this is it for them, and they are crushing it. But another really special thing about the show was that it was at the Forum, and the Forum is a really huge, like, historical Melbourne venue. We're from Sydney, so we've never played the Forum before. We didn't. It was the biggest venue. It was close to the biggest venue we'd played. We've played festivals that have been like quote unquote bigger, but this felt a lot more intentional because it was, you know, a sold out show. Festivals, people are wandering around, checking out bands, etc., etc. But this was like people arrive and they stay and they watch you. So I think arguably it was our biggest quote unquote show. And it was just stunning walking into the venue. It's got this amazing ceiling. It's like it's painted blue, and it's got this backlighting on it. It's got these stars on it, like the, you know, like lights coming through. It's just gorgeous, and it was the best setting for not only watching Spiritbox but being in the environment. Oh, got to chat with them backstage. I told Courtney she smells nice. It was the first thing that came to my head. It was true. And she was like, thanks, I bathed. It's funny. I mean, coming directly off a plane, you wouldn't think that someone would smell so angelic, but yet
super nice
here
compliment.
we are. I don't know. I think it's a thing between women as well. It's like one of the highest compliments you can give someone, because it's like this tiny like hidden insecurity that people don't realize they have. So when someone tells you smell nice, it's like, cool, I'm good then.
It's true, guys. We don't say that enough to each other. It's just like, oh, you're smelling me.
You should try it next time. Yeah, dude, you smell so good.
It might actually flatter them, like, oh, thanks, I bathed today.
You never know. You may make someone's day, really. But it was, I mean, yeah, I have no complaints about our set at all. Everyone seemed to really enjoy it. We did gain a lot of new fans out of the show. I feel like we're picking up new people at every show we play, because we've been playing a lot of shows that are starting to really like hone us into a corner of the community. It's feeling quite metalcore, but also prog, but it's kind of somewhere like, I don't know, it feels like a very sophisticated corner of the industry.
Ooh, sophisticated.
It feels great. It's the best place to be. We are surrounded by the most wonderful people, and we're getting such good reception. And I just, it's really setting us up very well for the next era. And Spiritbox are just incredible. I couldn't have thought of a better match. I couldn't have been more grateful for that night. It was just incredible.
That's amazing. I feel so happy just like knowing how happy you are about the show. How'd you manage to get in? Did Spiritbox hit you up, or did you have to get on the bill yourselves?
Yeah, well, it just came through to us somewhere in January. We were actually away on a writing retreat, the whole band, when we got the news. So it was pretty, like, we all got to do our little yay together. It was cool. Very rarely are we all in the same room together when we're receiving a show offer, especially one that's kind of a bit more like bucket list territory. Actually, I have this little artifact I'm realizing, because I'm in my office right now, so I just happen to have this. Look.
Oh,
it's the run sheet.
Yeah.
It's backwards for you, but it's got Relica, Make Them Suffer, Spiritbox. So it's pretty cool.
You got to frame
That's one on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just happened to be like on the door of our dressing room, and we were leaving, and I was like, I'm going to grab that. But Yeah, no, we just received the offer. It was definitely a big thanks to our team at Destroy All Lines. They're our booking agents. Jaden, shout out to Jaden Roy. He's the best. And yeah, it was a big surprise for us, really. We didn't have to do too much, and then there it was. So it's really cool.
Did Spiritbox know about your music beforehand?
Well, actually, funnily enough, I had an opportunity come up, I think it's about like a year and a half, 2 years ago now, where this publication, my friend Tim at Kill Your Stereo, he sent me an email and he was like, hey, we're doing this little series where, actually at this point, just a bit of context, Spiritbox were about to release Secret Garden, which I think was the last single off their album. So the album was coming up. There was a big press hype around it. I was very excited as a fan. Mm-hmm. But my friend Tim, he emails and says, we're actually doing this series thing with the publication where we get local Australian bands to interview international bands. So would you like to interview Courtney as part of the Secret Garden press cycle? And I was like, say less. I actually had never conducted an interview before. I'd only ever done them for Relica, really, but it was so much fun. So all this to say, Courtney and I have actually spoken before. I would not blame her at all for not remembering this because it was a while ago, and it was one of those situations where it kind of like a press junket, I guess, is that the word, where you spend 15 minutes on the phone with someone, you hang up and you immediately pick up the phone to another person, another interviewer. And so she was doing back to back interviews, and I just happened to be one of those. But we had a really good chat. We spoke about, I told her I was sort of coming at her from a couple of different lenses. Not only am I a fan of Spiritbox, I'm also a fellow musician, but I'm also a fellow woman in metal. So I feel like there's a bit of camaraderie to be made out of that. We're always trying to seek advice from each other and stick together. And we had a really good conversation about the fact that you're sort of growing in tandem with your audience, instead of, letting your audience dictate what direction you go. You're just sort of growing together. It was really insightful. But all this to be said, they did actually, I remember 2 days or something after that came out, they did a little Twitter shout out to a couple of bands, and Relica was one of them. So it made me think, yeah, okay, cool. They do know who we are. So that's really awesome. And I do wonder if that had any connection as to why we got this show. Like, they knew who we were from then, and oh yeah, those guys are sick. Now that we're back, now that we're finally coming to Australia, let's tee something up. But to be honest, it's a bit of a mystery for us. We didn't really get that far in our conversation.
Interesting. Okay. Well, it's cool to hear the camaraderie between you two. Still, even if they didn't really fully check out your music, but how about the fans at the show? Were they kind of you said it already, but were all extremely accepting of Relica, or were they kind of waiting for Spiritbox, or what was it like?
As always, there's a bit of a 50-50 scenario, especially for the opening band. But at least half an hour before we played, there was a line around the block. So that was a very promising sign. In Australia, I don't know exactly how it is with other communities, but in Australia, there's been a really big sort of uptick in fans coming to see the opening band, specifically making an effort to arrive at door time as opposed to just rock up for Spiritbox, or just rock up for the headliner or whatever. So that's been really good for a lot of more grassroots acts. And so it was really nice to see that the room was basically full by the time we played. People were naturally still streaming in. They were checking out merch that as you do, you're rocking up to a show. But I think we did have a really good, dedicated audience in general, in the night. Everyone did seem to pay really close attention. Look, all this to be said, it went by so fast, as it always does with big shows like that. I was on stage and all of a sudden I was saying thanks, good night, walking off,
Yeah.
So I didn't really get the opportunity that I wanted to really get a good look of everyone. Although I do actually remember at one point in the set there's a part in Safety, like the bridge, where it gets a little bit more like sort of simmering down. Yeah, a bit like that. I sort of was just like patrolling the front of the stage, and I said into the mic, just trying to get a good look of you, because I genuinely was. It's such a special thing to be able to lock eyes with people, and I'm not afraid of that at all. I'm not afraid of eye contact, so I really try to sort of scrutinize my audience a little bit, and I think that the reception was great. I cannot fault it at all. Very happy, and it's always more than we were expecting. We set the bar pretty low. Sometimes we walk into a show being like, look, if we play to half a room, we're happy, kind of thing. Or even if people are on their phones or drinking their beers or whatever and don't give a shit, at least we're there and at least they're hearing us. So anything more than that is a win, and we definitely got more than that. So that's just brilliant.
Yeah, that's a good attitude to have. But one thing that you said about looking at eye contact with the crowd, I think that's another reason why Mr. Magic or your other songs grip me in, is the charisma, the way that you are also helps too. And I've seen some live videos and you control a crowd pretty well too, and that always hypes up the crowd big time, especially if they don't know you. It's just like, oh, okay, there's something intriguing here. It's almost like you gotta sell yourself a little bit too, and it just seems like it's natural, right?
That's exactly it. You really do have to make an impression, because I feel like our job as an opening act especially is to get people hyped, where it doesn't have to be for us, but just hyped for the night in general. And we've had a fair few experiences now being that opening act for a band that is significantly larger than us, which is really rewarding, I think, because you can see the energy change from sort of at the beginning where people are a bit apprehensive, they're not really that involved, to by the end of your set, people have had their hands up once or twice, people are cheering, people seem really, there's just when a big crowd of people, especially like-minded people, come together, you can, I know it sounds cheesy as fuck, but excuse my language.
No, you can say fuck, it's okay.
It sounds cheesy, but you can feel the energy. Everyone's minds are sort of connected in some way. So it's a very rewarding experience to be able to have some kind of orchestration over that energy, And I will also say an interesting thing that has sort of been a lesson I've learned in this opening band process is there's a fine line that I walk, and I'm sure that a lot of other vocalists or front people will resonate with this. There's a fine line that I walk between kind of going all out energy-wise and really trying to amp up the crowd, and simmering back and not setting the bar too high, because you can't ask too much of your audience when you're the opening band. You'll understand this. Because people are they're preserving their energy. They also probably don't know you. They're unlikely to jump off their feet and tear the place apart for a band that they've only just met. You know what I mean? Buy me dinner first, right?
It's a little try-hardy. Too.
Yeah, no, well, that's it. That's something that I've been really insecure about. I've been really scared of making an ass of myself. Come on, I don't want the response to, my audience's response to be look at me and be like, come on, man. We're not going to do that.
So, get rid of that mentality, I think.
Well, I get that. I'm not too worried anymore, because I sort of figured out a bit of a formula. By I use usually the second or the third song in our set as the tester. So once people have heard us for a little bit, been 5-10 minutes, this is probably the time where they're most likely to move if they're going to. And I'll use that song, that somewhere in that song, I'll do a jump with me or a hands up or something like that. And I'll use that as a little checkbox. If they don't do it, if nothing happened, I'll be like, okay, great. Now I know what this night is. You know what I mean? I will I'm not going to push it too hard, because if I do and people still don't move, it's awkward. It's tension. It's like people don't love that. They don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
So if I get to that point and they really got into it, I saw a spark, I'm like, cool, I can milk that a little bit more. You know what I mean? We can amp it up towards the end of our set. We can really get people involved and get people moving. But if it's a prog crowd, for example, and they're standing there like this, and they don't, like, with arms crossed, for those listening to the podcast, arms crossed, judgy face, it's a very prog crowd thing, and they don't put their hands up. You know, they're double parked, 2 drinks in hand, they can't clap their hands together.
2 drinks in hand? I don't believe that. No.
That's Australia, dude.
Oh, well, Australia, okay. Prague guys no, they're usually too much like this the whole time. But yeah.
That's it. But yeah, I'll try to use that as a bit of an indicator of, okay, great, I can focus more on just delivering a solid performance, you know, like something they can watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like there's a difference to having a show that you can involve yourself in and a show that's a spectacle and it's really magnificent to watch, like a movie. I really love seeking out that balance, and it's kind of a bit of a formula for me now to know what direction to take the rest of the set. And I mean, like you said, I don't have to feel that way. I don't so much anymore, because I feel like this little formula is working out for me a little bit. I haven't made too much of an ass of myself recently, so that's good.
It takes time. Like, obviously, I've never fronted a crowd, right? But I just know that if you're being your natural self, you know, things just come naturally and people respect you for who you are. But that's if you are a little bit too try-hardy, then it doesn't feel as genuine, right? But there is a level of, like, you got to read the crowd for sure. If you're trying to do things and they're all crossing their arms, then yeah, you understand it. But no, I think it was just experience and everything. But like I already said in some of the videos and like live videos too that I've seen, you guys seem to understand it better than a lot of other upcoming bands that I check out. I think there's a lot of...
Thank you.
Man, I'm complimenting you guys like crazy. It's funny because like my community really likes your music too. Like,
so great to hear.
That little pocket.
We can't wait to make it over.
What's that?
I just said we can't. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. We can't wait to make it over and meet someone new.
Oh, come over. Yeah, you got to play a show in Canada, or maybe I have to go to Australia. I need to get out of Canada, but yeah, no,
We've got plenty of people here who would love to meet you. So you're in good hands if you come to Australia.
The Australia scene is crazy, but yeah, my community though, it's like that same pocket that you said, where it's like a little bit more proggy but it's accepting. It's like a Spiritbox could definitely fall into that crowd, but it is interesting because like your band is so different sounding than the majority of bands out there. You can't even pinpoint, are these guys metalcore? They don't really write breakdowns. But are they progressive metal? But they don't sound like Dream Theater. Like there's like it's hard to perfectly describe you guys. So that's why I'm like, what is your pocket? And I think the fact that you guys are kind of like working with Spiritbox and Make Them Suffer, that seems like that makes sense. That tour, that show, I mean.
It does, doesn't it? It felt very natural. You know, we're natural. We're still figuring out where we are, and you know, you mentioned something about authenticity, and that's a big thing for us. You know, not only in our stage presence, like you know that I'm not pretending on stage, because I'll crack a smile, like a huge grin all the way through our set, basically, because I'm genuinely having the best time. Anyway, that was just a bit of a side note. Authenticity wise, as to where we sit, I'm very honest about the fact that we're still figuring that out. I mean, naturally, all of our favorite bands, it takes a couple of albums, it takes a couple of years to really find that exact niche that you belong in. And so I'm not going to, I think I got a little worried for a while, and I still do think about this sometimes. I worry, like, you know, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we receive in our music is, you know, we don't know where you belong. Like, who are you? What are you? And I think that the EP was a bit of like a commentary on that. Like, I don't know what I am. It's like, we don't yet. We don't know what genre we are really. I mean, the closest we can sort of come to it is like a progressive metalcore kind of thing, like it's metalcore but it's clean, or it's instead of where you'd usually have harsh vocals, we have rap because I don't use harsh vocals, and we're still definitely honest about the fact that we're figuring it out, but in this next era that we're sort of moving towards now, we're definitely starting to see some shape to it. And I think progressive metalcore still definitely fits, because it's tricky because we as artists and as just fans of music, we don't want to be a quote prog band. We don't want to be a quote metalcore band. There's just something about like those specific labels that doesn't quite feel like home to us. And also when you consider the label, it also comes with the bands that you play with on stage, like the bands that you join tours with and the lineups that you be part of. And if you eventually, it's like, okay, you put out an album and it's so undeniably prog. This is a prog album. You then get the prog sticker, which means that you play with prog bands, which means that you play to prog fans. And it's like, I feel like there would be I feel like I would be missing the metalcore feel and that sort of sophistication. And not saying that prog is like one of the most sophisticated genres out there. Like they're wizards, dude. But just as a fan of music, it's not really my personal niche. I think that by maybe album 2, we'll come back, we'll do this podcast again, and we will have a much more clear answer as to who we are, what we are. But I think right now the best thing for us is to keep that vibe of can fit anywhere, because it really helps us establish our community, I think. And it also helps us hit the most ears possible too. If we've got people from the metalcore community and people from the prog community both listening and both enjoying, then maybe, that'll help us in the future as well. Like who speaks out about that, who enjoys our music, that'll help us sort of gravitate more towards them. So it's a fun little thought experiment at the moment is what we're doing. But I know that in future we will have a more solid label, I think. I just don't know what that is yet.
I get that, and I totally understand where you're coming from, but at the same time I feel like labels also can limit the band a little bit. I do feel like bands who stand the test of time are ones that are hard to describe their sound and put into a certain pocket, and then they end up making their own pocket, putting their own dent in the scene. Like whether it's like look at Sleep Token right now, for example. No one knows what genre they are. I say they're like progressive metal rock. That's easy, but sometimes they're like art rock. They're indie a little bit. Sometimes they're very poppy. There's a culmination of so many different sounds. So I think a band like that are just absolutely killing it this year, and they're pulling in so many different audiences, right? And I think so. Yeah, that's the same thing with you. And I think there is like a interview. I haven't read the interview, but it was Vessel talking about labels and labels don't matter kind of thing. And with that mentality, I think it really kind of like broadens you and makes you not limited to a certain sound. But then I totally understand where you're coming from with the tours though. Like you don't want to, so our sound is so varied and our audience is so varied, but who do we tour with? Because there's definitely the prog crowd and there's definitely the metalcore crowd. So I think that maybe in a couple more albums, you'll start to understand your sound a little bit more. But at the same time, I do feel like figuring a label for who you are also might limit yourself in the future a little bit.
It's such a good point. And Sleep Token is the best example you could have brought up there. It's something that I think we're sitting where it feels natural for us right now. It feels like a very, and I have no shame in the fact that we are still figuring stuff out. I feel like there's this big culture in sort of the quote unquote up and coming metalcore community, like the local bands or like the grassroots artists, there's this unspoken pressure that you need to have it all figured out, like from day dot. And I've just never really believed in that. I mean, not to say never, like when we were very first starting out, I was very worried about what people thought of us and all the expectations. And of course that still reigns true. But basically what I'm trying to say is there's this act that I think a lot of younger, more up and coming bands put on, and it's not their fault, but they feel like they need to have it all figured out. They have to have the best of the best. They need to have the best branding, know exactly where they're going. And quality is not what I'm talking about. Quality is one thing, and that's absolutely true. The quality standard is getting higher and higher. But when it comes to the personality, you need to be authentic in the fact that you're still figuring that out, I think. And there's no shame in that. And that was definitely one of the more freeing lessons that I learnt. And it really pays off too, because when you're authentic in that way, you start to communicate a lot more with a lot more people, and people resonate with you, and you build a really positive little tight-knit network around you of people who trust you and want you to play their shows and want to buy your merch and, you know, want to listen to your music and stuff like that, because you're giving, like, I don't know, I really don't want any of this to sound like I'm blowing smoke at all. Like, all I'm trying to say really is almost the opposite. We're still figuring it out, and I think that that's okay, you know?
Yeah, I didn't get that impression at all that you were blowing smoke.
Good.
But there definitely is bands that like want to have everything figured out, but also they want to be like a certain sound too, right? They're like, we want to be like this band, but maybe heavier or add this sound. But also I do feel like it's not being your complete natural self in a way. And I
feel like it's like fighting the evolution, like the natural evolution that exists. If you start from day one and say, I want to be a metalcore band, or I want to be this band, this is the band I want to sound like, I'm going to do that, you're almost, you're limiting yourself in the way that, like, there might be a sound that you're passionate to chase, or a sound that your band just naturally wants to follow, like a path that your band naturally will follow. But if you're fighting that and you're limiting that, it probably leads to like a really, like almost an identity crisis in a band. It's like, who really are we, sort of thing. So being flexible is definitely one of the more difficult lessons to learn, but definitely a rewarding one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, there's always bands that are constantly having identity crises, like Gideon. I just checked out. Do you know Gideon? Yeah, so
I know the name. I don't think I've listened to them though.
They're like a hardcore band that's been around for like 15 years, and then they went metalcore, and then the last record was like new metal, and everyone's like, what the hell? But then their new album went back to hardcore, and like people are really loving it. They still had a little bit of new metal. It's like they finally figured out their sound 15 years later. It took them that long.
It really does take that long too. And close to home, North Lane is a great example, right? They've always been like as metalcore can come, you know what I mean? Which is fantastic. And it really did work for them in their growing years. But when Alien dropped, all of that changed, I feel like. And they really introduced the more, I suppose, like, what's the best way to describe it? Like the cyberpunk sound kind of thing. And now that's who they are. They've dropped Obsidian. It has evolved from that. And it's like this, I think that there's such a great example of following your band's natural evolution. They're definitely going to be they're going to be studied for years to come, I think, in the industry.
They already have been since like 2011, 2013, when even their old metalcore days. But okay, with that being said, the evolution of Relica, what's the exact future? Can you give us an idea of like the sound that we can expect from Relica?
I can. I wouldn't use IDK as a comparison at all. That's not to say that we sound completely different now. None of that to be said. I just think that IDK is going to exist in a bit of a vacuum when it comes to this album. This album is, I'm like, I think LP1 for most bands even is kind of the debut. Like, you know, even though it's not, you know, you've had a lot of music out, you've been established for a while, but for a lot of artists, LP1 needs to be treated as like the debut to the world. You know, it's going to be distributed on a larger scale. Sound wise, oh gosh, it's really hard to explain. It definitely still, you still got a lot of variety, as you can probably expect from us. We've actually taken a really new route to our songwriting. Historically, we have been notoriously slow writers. That's just been a hindrance to us. We're just slow. I don't know. We take our time. It's worked for us in the past, but now we're getting to the point where, you know, music is currency, and you need to make sure that you're trying new strategies and yeah, pumping out the material, but not in a way that feels forced. Just evolving as songwriters, and we've definitely done that. We've teed up with producer Chris Blancardo. Shout out to Chris. Absolutely love you. He's really helped us sort of unlock who we are as artists, and he's sort of helped refine the process. He's also thrown a couple of new strategies at us, and which we've tried, and some of them have stuck, some of them haven't. Some of the songs on this album have come together really quickly, which is so different to us. Like, two of the frontrunners right now, they came together in 2 days each.
Oh, yeah?
And they're very different. You're going to be excited. You're going to like it. I'm really excited.
What are some of these strategies, though? What's changed in the writing process?
Well, what we used to do, and this hasn't gone to the wayside. We still do this sometimes. It just depends on where we're at, sort of what's happening in our own lives and stuff like that. But traditionally, the Relica songwriting process is Brandon, our guitarist, or Miles. Usually it's Brandon or Miles, but it's usually Brandon. He'll just throw a full like 3 to 4 minute demo instrumental in our Dropbox, and he'll say, "Hey, new demo's up. go listen to it." Yeah. And it'll just be basically straight riffs. Like, I mean, he's pretty good with his structure. He'll definitely, there will be some kind of semblance of intros, verses, choruses, etc. But usually a lot of that shifts when we get our hands on it. It'll usually go, Brandon will drop a demo, then Ben will put like his own drums to it. Then both Miles and I are sort of working in tandem. Miles will be adding synths and bass, and I will be off to the wayside, listening to it over and over and adding my vocals. And this all happens in a sort of an isolated experience. You know, we don't really get into the writing room, so to speak. Except all of that has changed for this LP. Like I said, I think I mentioned this when I was telling another story about Spiritbox before, but we went on a writer's retreat a few months ago in January.
Sorry, what kind of
writer's retreat?
Writer's retreat?
Writing? Like just to write? Like we went on a holiday basically.
The Australian accent, my bad.
What did you think I said?
I had the rising retreat.
It sounds so like pretentious. Oh yeah. No, I mean, it still kind of sounds pretentious to call it a writer's retreat, but like, yeah, writing, like writing songwriting retreat. There you go. We sort of went, just packed up the whole studio with the band, and we took it to the mountains, the snowy mountains in Australia, and we really got together to write, as opposed to doing it in this sort of disjointed, like almost like production line type approach. And we tried really writing from scratch too, as opposed to someone already, like Brandon, for example, someone already has an idea of what this song's going to sound like, and then we write to it and that's what it turns into. Instead, we start from scratch. So Brandon will be riffing on his guitar live. We'll just press the record button. I'll be sitting next to him and he'll be just noodling around, and I'll say, "Oh, that sounds really good. Can you do that again?" just really mining for feel, quote unquote. Like, you know the feeling when a song feels good, when there's notes that collide that just give you like this little tingle or something just clicks. And that's what we were searching for. That is exactly what we were searching for.
The magic.
And yeah, I know it's silly, but yeah, just a little bit of a spark in that regard. And so Brandon would be noodling around. I would say, great, I really like that. Oh, can you change like that little bit to like something more like this? Okay, great. Play it, record it. We'll have a verse down. I will actually physically write these days, like using a notebook. I never used to do that. I usually just get behind the computer. It's like writing an essay. Ugh. It's really, I've definitely evolved from that. But just spitting out words and sounds that feel like they fit, and then I'll jump behind the mic, record those. It's just really quick and dirty. Like, it's I'm definitely a perfectionist when it comes to songwriting, and we all are, which is partially why we were so slow in the past, because things have to be right and whatever. But lately we've really been trying to just chase the feel, and that's it. And it doesn't matter about how perfect the lyrics are. It doesn't matter how refined or techie the riff is or whatever. But yeah, so we've got a couple of songs like that up our sleeves, and I actually wonder when we start releasing them if people are going to, like, at least the fans who have listened quite a lot to our music, if people are going to be able to tell which ones were written differently, because I feel like it's obvious. I feel like that's probably just me, because I exist in a vacuum. I know everything that's going on behind the scenes, but I just wonder when we start releasing this music if people are going to hear like so-and-so song and be like, that was written differently. This is different. This is new Relica, and I'm excited for that experience.
So only a few were written in the writer's retreat.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them were sort of refined there too. Like, they'd already been written in the way that I was telling you.
Okay, before, and the old way.
Visited them and changed them a bit and stuff. In this new way of writing. But yeah, there are a handful of songs that were written in that sort of fast and loose way. They definitely weren't all like that, because that'd be a very quick album, and we maybe next time maybe we'll be really good at it by then, but this is quite new to us, so we've just experimented a couple times, and I really do think there's something there for us, so we're gonna try that again next time, I think.
I think there is something special about albums that are written in such a quick period of time. There's times where it's like a 3-month period. They just write it and record it all at the same time. It ends up being just like a cool time period or timepiece of where they were at that specific time. And it's really, really good. It may not be exactly refined, but it's like, it's what we were talking about earlier. It's like pure, authentic, chasing the feeling. That's why it works. And then there's the argument too, where an album could take like a year, and then they perfect everything, and it could be amazing. Or it could be a little bit, I don't know, it could be a little bit divided too. So it's hard to say.
It is very hard to say. And I mean, it's the classic not one size fits all. You know what I mean? Every band has to chase their own approach. There are, like, I mean, the traditional way of songwriting where bands will get together and physically like jam out a song like Beatles style doesn't work for a lot of bands anymore. You know, songwriting is evolving, and I personally can't even really imagine writing a song that way anymore, because there are so many like more minute details to making a song these days. Like even when we're writing those quick and dirty like songs in the studio, just laying down a riff, laying down some vocals over it, we also still like take a look at like sample libraries and chuck in like synths and stuff like that to really embody the feel. And that's not really something that you can do unless you have access to the equipment and the tools for it. And that's not to say that you can't write a banging song without it, and you absolutely can. It's just, I think a lot of people's visions are evolving, and the standard is becoming more complex. And to be able to get an idea for a song, people need more and more. Like, people need to hear that synth to see if it works, or people need to hear that bass line to see if it works. It needs to be the vocals need to be tuned, you know what I mean, to make sure that it sort of all comes together. There's a lot of tiny moving parts to songwriting these days, and I think in this case we sort of kept it more simple, which was really cool. But it also there still is a lot of like complexity to it, more so than maybe a lot of bands, and sometimes that's a hindrance to us. But I mean, it works for us, so if it works for us, that's great. We're going to keep doing it.
When can we expect it?
I don't have an answer for you, unfortunately.
Okay.
But look, things are locked and loaded. We still got, like, I can tell you, we still got to record this album. Like we've demos are all lined up, but the next couple of months are going to be very, very busy for us. And if you see us playing less shows, you know why, because we are working on an album. And but plans are in the works, and it's all, you know, like local band energy, big things coming as the photo.
No, I can't wait for you guys. Seriously, I think you guys have a bright future in the scene. You guys you started from high school, right?
We did, yeah. It's pretty rare, apparently, to have bands that started from high school. I've only really realized that speaking to people, like, wait, you guys didn't know each other when you were 12? How weird. Yeah, so we've all known each other for about 12 years now.
Wow.
And it's very special to be able to keep that connection alive. Where it's I know it sounds, again, it's cheesy, but it's like family. I can't really picture it any other way. Yeah, we started making music together, like just playing like Linkin Park covers and stuff when we were about 13, 14 years old. And the rest is history, really. We wrote our first original song for a school project, like an assignment that we had to do in music class, and that actually ended up being recorded and released.
Wait, you can find it online?
Yeah, it's there. It's on Spotify. It's funny. It's the song. It's one of the songs on our very first EP. Which
so you refined it?
Yes, it's there. It exists. It's Omega. It's the final song on the album, on the EP. We released that. Well, actually, no, we recorded that in like 2016, 15, 16, something like that. And it's, you know, it's very dated. But you know, that's where our roots. We were still in high school.
Yeah, you wrote.
Recorded it and when we wrote it, so it's kind of like coming back to this idea of authenticity, right? Like a lot of people, they would remove that kind of thing from their Spotify catalog or their streaming catalog, but you know, it weirdly, people actually listen to it, and we're not ashamed of that. I mean, I'm cringing a little bit on the inside.
No.
Like, I'm not, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not ashamed to be able to show our roots and like, look, this is where we came from. People know we're a high school band, and I think it's if anything, it's a testament to kind of the commitment that it took to now we're here. Like, now we're releasing music that we're really proud of, and we were really proud at the time of what we made. And I just think it's a cute little part of our legacy. So yeah, it exists out there.
Exactly, embrace it. So a little bit different on my end, but like with my videos, I will never delete my very first video, but can I watch it? Oh, it's so cringy.
You understand. You absolutely understand how I feel. Like, it's the sentiment to it. You're going to keep it. People are always going to watch it, and like, it shows how far you've come. But yeah, I'm not going to listen to that.
Yeah,
probably ever.
They comment on the video too, just saying, wow, like the channel's definitely changed and stuff. I'm like, yeah.
Did you have short hair back then?
Oh yeah, short hair. Apparently I looked like a prog gent kid. I had glasses and short hair, no beard. But no, I'm so excited for you guys. I really am, and I think my community is too for sure. I hope the new album like really gets you a lot more exposure, because honestly, I think that's the only thing that you guys need. You have good music. Well, you need more music, so the albums for sure is going to help that. But the exposure. One thing, or actually two things I want to talk about. So we're going to get a little bit more spicy here because we're already clocking at 51 minutes. So that's sweet. But I know. But I want to talk about some controversial questions, because you mentioned it earlier when you were talking about like Courtney and Spiritbox and females and metal and stuff. I'm like, I can't talk about this stuff myself because I'm a male. So we have two different points here, or things to talk about. So the first one is female fronted bands, because obviously metal is male dominant, and so when there's a female vocalist, it makes it easier maybe to identify a band's sound sometimes, even though there's a lot of males that have like really high pitched voices like Anthony Green and stuff. But what is your thoughts on the terminology female fronted bands?
It's a very interesting discourse within the industry, and being one of the quote unquote like female fronted bands, it makes it a little bit different, because we hear it a lot ourselves. It's actually funny that you ask this, coming off like International Women's Day, and I also did a podcast recently, sort of talking all about this. With Amy and Denny. So that was really quite interesting, quite enlightening, speaking to other women who are in this exact same experience as me. In terms of the terminology, like if you're asking the terminology, like female fronted band, I mean, firstly, I guess surface level, I don't have a problem with it, because it's just a descriptor, I guess. I mean, I suppose you could find issues with it if you start using it as something that tokenizes the band, or something that isolates the band from the rest of their community. For example, something that came up in the podcast that I was chatting to a few months ago, using the like good for a girl, or oh yeah, for a girl your screams are really sick, or I don't like a lot of female fronted bands, but your band is sick, or something like that. It's a very backhanded compliment, It's basically, it's like, okay, what is it that you don't like about female fronted bands? You're treating it like it's a genre kind of thing. Like first off, I don't like a lot of female fronted bands. It's like, okay, but do you know how diverse these bands are? Like, what kind of bands are you talking about? Are you talking about female-fronted bands in pop? Are you talking about female-fronted bands in pop punk, like Paramore? Are you talking about Evanescence? Are you talking about like prog or metal or whatever? People don't realize that it's the community is so much more diverse than they have seen. So really, what I'm trying to say is, like, when people talk about, like, in their media reviews or something like that, like, oh yeah, this is a really great female-fronted band, powerful vocals, or like, great instrumentation. They just talk about the band holistically and they really dive into the sound. I don't think there's any problem with that at all, as long as you're acknowledging kind of the experience that we have had, and maybe that may not have been as easy as men historically, I suppose. It's a really hard topic to address.
It is. Like, it's kind of like segregation a little bit too. Like,
yeah.
But at the same time, you might go into, you were mentioning pop, but pop doesn't have, male fronted pop, female fronted pop.
No, and male fronted doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? It's like, why is, I think that when people use female fronted as an adjective, they're sort of acknowledging the fact that male is the standard. Male is a given. But then female, ooh, interesting, different, weird. Like, it's it's sort of, it's something that needs to be challenged, I think, because women are surfacing a lot more in the industry, and I love that, having more inspiration to draw from, and having the younger generation have more people to look up to, people that look like them, sound like them on the stage. I think that that's really special, and something that I definitely needed as a kid, and I didn't really have. I actually, when I was first surfacing into this industry and into this style of music, I really hated my femininity. I tried to masculinify myself. Like I wore the baggiest t-shirts and the ripped jeans and the Vans, and I tied my hair back, and I lowered my voice. I changed my posture. I acted different. Especially, like, this is an Australian thing too. But there's this kind of like borderline toxic one of the boys culture around here. I don't know how that is in Canada for you. I don't know how it is in the States or UK, but in Australia, it's very boys club, and you have to sort of know the right people, and you need to be the right kind of person. You need to be masculine to be able to have a leg up in this industry. At least it was when I was first starting out in like 2015, 2016 time. But since then, I've definitely, I've seen more people in the industry, more women and more gender diversity in general, that has encouraged me to sort of come out of my shell a bit. And now I'm not too worried about it. In fact, it's empowering to be the only woman in the room, as scary as it can be sometimes, and as scary as it can be for a lot of people. Thankfully, for the most part, everyone in my circle has been very open and supportive and very accepting, which is great. But it's a tricky one.
So it's changed then a little bit over the years. It's gone a little bit better, is what you're saying too.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. It's only getting better, at least from what I can tell. There's definitely still those internet warriors who say that
always
just stupid things, like but it's comical, Like that's why people like you exist, to rise up above that, and also to just kind of make fun of those people, and show the world that there's so much diversity out there, and praise it for what it is, and not just its token, like female fronted, oh my god, there's more to a band than that. But it's also something that should be celebrated, because there's more and more of it coming. It's
weird. It's like empowering a little bit, right? But
it is.
To me, I will say that, like, I catch myself saying female fronted quite a bit. I can't help it. It's like, Spiritbox is a female fronted band. It just helps explain the sound. But then I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that. And the reason why is that I'm such an advocate about gatekeeping and elitism being like the cancer of the scene. And saying something female fronted is slightly attached to that, because it's like, having a certain sound, and it's limiting, and it's not making things as diverse as you think, because if it was as diverse as it was, you wouldn't even have to say that to begin with. You could just say it's a band. She is the vocalist or whoever else. You don't even have to say female fronted, but it's just like, it's part of that mentality, right? And I think there's a lot of like, it's extremely male dominant. Like, my YouTube demographic is 96% male, 4% female. But
no way.
YouTube.
Well, I'm one of them.
Nice. Well, YouTube is generally like that. TikTok's a lot different. So I'm on TikTok, and there's like, I don't know the exact demographics, but I know there's a lot more girls on TikTok. But another thing that's kind of attached to this is misogyny in the scene. So a girl recently, very sweet girl, messaged me on Instagram asking me if this would make a good topic for my videos and stuff. I'm like, it would, and it could, but I don't know if I'm like the best to talk about it. So
shout out to her.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for bringing it up.
So yeah, she recently went to a show where women were like crowd surfing and men were grabbing their boobs and bodies, and it's not the first time, right? So that her friends have been groped or even slightly undressed at shows. So men were also making fun of them for being in the pit because, you know, they don't belong in the pit, right? And she says she hasn't seen misogyny like this bad in the scene. And she was asking me like, what are your thoughts on ways to address it? And I'm like, I feel like I do have a slight answer, but I'm wondering your thoughts first.
It is. I'm firstly to like, if this person is listening, I'm so sorry that you had that experience, and I really do resonate with you. I mean, it's very easy for me to say things like I literally just said, where it's only getting better, you know, because every corner of this world is different. You know what I mean? Like right now, my very isolated community in Australia, I just happen to be surrounded by people who are really championing women and advocating for their safety and things like that. But then you go on the internet and you hear about stuff like that and you realize, okay, maybe we're taking one step forward and two steps back. In terms of combating it, I think it's a matter of there are a lot of bands these days who are actively making it a priority for them at their shows. When they have a voice, they have a platform on that stage to be able to speak out and say, hey, if I see anyone pulling any shit, I'm going to call it out. Also, this song is for the women and gender diverse people in the crowd. Come to the front. This is for you. You know, this is your space. And I'm personally still really trying to find my voice in that scenario. Being like an opening band and stuff, you don't always get the opportunity, or it doesn't always feel right to be. And I know that's something that I'm struggling with every day, to go on spiels like that and to talk about things that are important to you, because sometimes you don't want to take the attention away from the big act or whatever, you know, you're just the opening band and stuff. So you don't feel like you have that power. But I really want to be part of those artists who are using their platform to call that shit out and not letting it fly. But sometimes it just depends on the shows you go to. Like it depends on the band's culture around them and the fans that they have. And we will never ever be able to control every single misogynist in the scene. It's just a matter of having the confidence and self-respect to not let it happen on your watch, kind of thing. And I suppose that kind of sucks too, because then that puts pressure and it puts onus on you when you've done nothing wrong to speak out about it. But what else is going to be done? You know what I mean? It's bleak, but it's important.
No, it's well addressed. It's a tough question. That's why I'm saving these towards the end, because for me, I don't know how to even answer it either. But I think what you were saying about platforms and musicians having the platform to address it helps big time, because otherwise it goes like unsaid and people aren't getting educated on it, right? It goes unnoticed. Yeah. So even us talking about it right now is giving talking about it out loud publicly, which helps. But the other point that I was mentioning earlier about gatekeeping and elitism, I think is attached to this too, because if we're gatekeeping the sounds of metal, you can't do this with metal, you can't do screaming and deathcore music, all these little things, right? If we're limiting the sound, we're limiting the people that can join the metal scene too, right? And instead, if we're just much more accepting of what this style of music can be and let the music evolve, there's going to be more people tuning in and listening in. And just look at what's happening with, again, Sleep Token is a great example. Bad Omens is another example where they're pulling a large female demographic. Same as Spiritbox. Spiritbox, a lot of women, look up to Courtney. And for sure you, Mon, I'm sure, there's going to be tons of girls that look up to you as a vocalist. So I think just more accepting of these artists and sounds will bring more diverse groups, therefore making it feel not so male dominant, right? And I think that will help for sure, because if you do go to a show and it's like 95% male and 5% female, the odds are not in your favor. There's going to be misogynists, gross people there. There is even, so I think go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, like, just tying on that as well, like, depending on the shows you go to, I think as well, like, if we're talking tips for patrons at shows, I guess don't be afraid to make friends or bring friends or take up space, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If you feel safer at a show, like you really want to see this band, right? But they're notorious for having shitty fans who are going to treat you awfully. It's safety in numbers sometimes. And I can say this as someone who has unfortunately had some pretty awful, scary experiences at shows in the past. It definitely does help to have a friend or a number of friends with you to kind of take up space in the space, and it'll also space in the space. I don't. What I'm trying to say, like
I get you.
To be a presence, and it'll also make you should be able to go to shows alone. You should be able to walk the streets alone. You should be able to do all of this. But look, if we can't change what people do and we can't change people's behaviors, the best thing we can do is stand up against them and fight back against them. So bring as many people as you can. Make friends with the bands as well, like speak out to them, send them a message after the show. Hey, this made me feel really shitty. Someone did this at your show. I really want to keep coming to support you, but I don't know if I can. If your fans are like this, what can you do? And if you're speaking to the right band, and a lot of bands are really becoming this way, they will speak out about it. They'll make a post calling out their fans, and no one wants their favorite artists to hate them. You know what I mean? So maybe that can spark some change. I mean, these are just almost grasping at straws strategies, but like from experience, sometimes it helps. It's
baby steps.
Baby steps. And look, I mean, Reliqa is tiny in the grand scheme of things right now, but I just want to say, if you ever feel like that at one of our shows, speak to us, speak to me. We will not allow it. It just simply put. I mean, thankfully, at pretty much every show that we have played recently, we've had like a majority of women, I feel like. It's been really interesting and amazing. Actually, we went on like our first headline tour to celebrate IDK and kind of just to test the waters, I guess, of what our fan base is like around Australia. And always, every single show, the front row, the barrier was all women. It was brilliant.
Really?
Like, it just felt really cool. Like, yeah, like, especially Brisbane. I think there were just a lot of really cool people there. And yeah, that kind of thing really gives me hope. And that's what makes me say hopeful things like, oh, it's getting better and stuff like that. But then, of course, there will always be the outliers. But we are stronger than we think, I guess.
Hell yeah. I love that. And this happened at like a Fit for a King show, actually. So I thought that was kind of weird, too.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I would imagine that they would be pretty open about that sort of thing. I don't know. They're cool people from what I know about Fit for a King.
Oh, they probably just didn't notice it, right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's so much to think about when you're actually playing and executing a show. You can't see everything, but hopefully that changes is all I can say. Look, people have to be responsible for their own actions. No one can control what they do. I don't know. Security need to get good.
It's weird because like if you go to an EDM show or something, it's like a good mix too. It's pretty diverse, like EDM shows, and like so I used to go to like dubstep shows, and it's not overly different from metalcore. You have the breakdown, you have the drop, right, and people move sort of the same, but it's way more diverse at an EDM show. A metal show, it's like all guys, right? So that's why I think it's a subject to continue talking about, and I do think gatekeeping is a problem, and also just bands continue to be public about it. I think Sam Carter does a great job at it.
Does. Yeah, he's a really good example. Yeah, there are a lot of people who are making their fans feel a lot safer, and I feel like sometimes that's the least we can do as artists, is to at least make our shows feel welcoming in whatever way we can. And of course, we can't control the minority of people who are going to ruin it for others, but we can do our best for the people that aren't dickheads. So
Isn't that so weird though? You go to like a jazz show or like a folk show and you don't have to think about being safe at all. Well, maybe like fire escapes, right? But
I mean, you've got bands saying things like "kill each other" in the pit.
You're right. Yeah.
I feel like it's an OH&S issue. Oh, you don't have OH&S, you are? Or do you? I don't know.
Sorry, say that again.
OH&S. I just realized that must be a very Australian
OH&S?
OH&S. It's occupational health and safety. It's just when, just like work safety, wearing hard hats and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No.
Well, now I'm introducing you to the Australian vernacular.
I got to come down to Australia. That's why. Show me all of this. We'll move on to the next segment. This is just some Patreon questions. Oh, I should probably plug the Patreon. So if you want to ask a question to the next guest on the MetalBirb podcast, then go to patreon.com/MetalBirb. That was smooth. First question is from, I didn't write down their names. This is from patron number 1. Do you or anyone in your band have any ties to North African, Middle Eastern culture that led to some of the influence appearing on Mr. Magic and Bearer of Bad News specifically?
No, we don't. Short answer. We do have, in terms of specifically, Bearer of Bad News. Miles and Ben are both brothers, and they are Thai. They come from Thailand. And actually, Miles had a big part in the sort of more culturally diverse sound that came out in that song. I don't know exactly if it came from specifically his own cultural background. We still, but it just I think that he got some East-West pack or something, and like a sample pack, and it like there were definitely interesting sounds in there that we wanted to explore. There's definitely an appreciation in our band for as diverse sounds as we can find, and of course often I do worry about, not worry, I really in the future want to try consulting with different cultural communities to sort of like actually get as authentic as possible. Traveling will help with that when it comes to the sounds we use, using authentic instruments and stuff like that. But for now, we're just trying to explore as much diversity in music as we can. It's not necessarily aiming for one particular cultural sound. I mean, look, even we're influenced by System of a Down. They're Armenian. They definitely have their own flair, which we draw from sometimes. It's there's not necessarily anything specifically cultural to us apart from Miles and Ben's Thai heritage, which is imparted into our music, but it just tends to turn out that way. And yeah, I would always, if you are the person who's asking this question, if you have any of those roots, please reach out to us, because we are always excited to talk more about different people's music culture, and it's just cool to learn about.
Oh, okay. So I'm such an advocate for that in music. Like, there's the scene is littered with like a lot of gent metalcore bands, and a lot of them are good for sure. It's just, why not pull sounds from different cultures, and when you hear that, it's something different. It's just so fresh and exciting. So I think that's exactly why I have 2 questions that are similar to that, right? From Patreon, and it's already standing out. And it's funny. It's just like it's from a sample pack, is all what it is. But I like.
Kind of, yeah. It does sometimes just become that simple, really.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't want to say that to minimize the cultural significance too, though. I want to make sure that anyone's roots. I mean, this would probably be a better question posed to someone like Miles, actually. So eventually I'll get him to maybe make a video on it or something like that. But really, we want to make sure that we're appreciating and paying respect to as many different cultures as we can. But at the end of the day, sometimes when it's composition, it can be just something that you hear something you like and you weave it in. So
there you go. But I like the idea of you getting the authentic source when you're traveling for shows and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So this question is pretty similar. It's just a straightforward one. But are you? Is anyone in the band a fan of chakran? Because there's a lot of chakran influence, is what this person says. I think this is Tundra.
I'm actually not personally familiar with chakran. I feel like someone in the band probably is, but we haven't spoken about it explicitly between us. But I'm going to have to check them out because it sounds pretty cool.
It's funny because like when I described your music, I'm like, it's like System of a Down meets chakran meets Protest the Hero. But I feel like you guys actually only really listen to System of a Down out of those three bands.
I actually feel like I do remember that from one of your first videos when you mentioned those influences. I mean, yeah, personally, System of a Down is big up there for me. They've always been a favorite band of mine. In terms of the other two, can't say that I've spent much time with them. Protest the Hero, I know you love them a lot. And I actually I think Brandon quite likes them, and he's shown me a bit of their music, and I do really enjoy it. But they haven't really been a mainstay for me. And I mean, when it comes to like explicit influences for us, like bands that directly influence our music, it's quite hard to like describe because sometimes I don't really know the answer. I mean, System of a Down is a really big one. Even bands like Carnival a little bit, which would make us a bit more prog than we are, but you know, just little bits here and there. I'm blanking.
Well, that's what makes it so interesting, though, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because, like I said, I'm like, I don't even think they listen to Protest the Hero, but I get Protest the Hero vibes big time. There's one part in one of your songs like, wow, this sounds so much like Protest, but it also doesn't. It just sounds like the same kind of like melodic idea, but you shift gears, right?
Yeah. I think everybody's always going to draw their own little conclusion as well. Like if
the listener,
if a listener hears something that they like, they're probably very likely going to relate it to something else that they like, and they're just going to draw these little. It's a playlist waiting to happen. Basically,
it's a compliment. It's a compliment.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's great. I mean, and I'm always looking for examples of who we sound like, because then I can go and listen to them, and then I can use that for the next stuff. So it's cool.
It's funny. One of the questions here too is like, ask her how many blood sacrifices we need to make you get a tour with them and Protest the Hero. Like other funny. People are drawing the comparisons a little bit too. But this one's a good one. I like this question. This is the last one from Patreon. So what is your biggest strength musically / artistically, and what is one aspect of yourself musically, artistically you need to improve the most?
Oh, biggest strength. Okay, I can answer this. I think that musically, like, and artistically together, one of my biggest strengths, and by extension the band's biggest strength, I think, is working with what we've got. I mean, I'm going to talk about myself specifically because this is my personal experience. And the band are incredibly talented, and I don't think that they're that limited at all. So I'm going to just like put this in my little bubble. When it comes to working with what I've got, a lot of people ask us, you know, in our music, why don't you scream, or why don't you have harsh vocals or anything like that? And I know it's a mainstay, it's a staple of metalcore music, and you know that's part of what makes us confusing. Is like, where do we put her? If I screamed, we'd probably be metalcore central. You know what I mean? But working with what I got means that I have a certain repertoire. Screaming is not in my repertoire as a vocalist. And Brandon will present me with a song that sounds like it should have screams over it. You know, it's real heavy, or it's very riffy or pacey. And I think one of my strengths is that I'm able to get creative with the vocals, I guess, lay down something that you may not traditionally expect would go there, but somehow it works. And I think a lot of people say that about our music, and it's really flattering. And it means that I've really grown a lot as a songwriter, as a vocal writer. because I no longer, well, I do sometimes in my weaker moments, but I no longer see the fact that I can't scream as a downside, I suppose. Like, I used to be really insecure about it. People aren't going to like us. We're not going to be heavy enough for them, and all of that. But I use things like rap and like a little bit of harshness or compression to my vocals to kind of make something feel thicker and more aggressive. And I use pace and melody and belting and stuff like that to make things sound more full and aggressive. So I think, strength-wise, I'm really proud of that. And I think that is something that I'll continue refining.
I think...
Yeah.
Sorry, I think it just subverts the listener's expectation a little bit too when you're like not, you say you don't know how to scream, but that could be also like a blessing in disguise, because you just said you're getting creative with it, and being creative is subverting the listener by like, oh, it's like a bunch of zeros on guitar and stuff. It should be like a heavy breakdown section, but you're not screaming, you're doing something different. And that's just like, oh, okay, I'm not used to this. So I think there's like a warm up, I think, for a lot of listeners, like, this is different. But like, I think some people can really get behind it too. So I think the fact that you can't scream is like, it's a little bit of a blessing in disguise, unless you do want to try screaming in the future. I work with Melissa Cross or whoever. Then.
Oh, Melissa Cross. Yeah, well, no, I fully agree. And I think that's what I was getting at. You know, I feel like when it comes to songwriting, it's not about having every technique under the sun in your repertoire. It's not about knowing how to do everything. It's about knowing how best to use the smaller amount that you do have. You know what I mean? Because no vocalist has every single skill under the sun. I mean, maybe Will Ramos, but he's nuts. But, you know, so it's about knowing, you know, making the best of what you've got and really getting creative within that smaller scale. And I think that's one of the the blessings in our music. But to answer this listener's question, actually, just quickly going back, I may scream one day in the future. It's not that I can't, like I physically can't. It's that I haven't taken the hours to learn how to do it. I do a little bit, like you'll hear in our new music, there's a grit to the voice sometimes. But it's sort of like scream adjacent, I guess. You know, I don't really fully commit to it yet. So I think that makes it even more exciting that one day I might, you know, it leaves room for evolution in our music. But I'm basically just never saying never kind of thing. I'm not saying that I will, because I'm quite comfortable where I am right now, but I'm not saying that I won't either. So you can stay tuned for that.
Okay, well, you know what that kind of reminds me of is like Vessel too. Vessel, like he's not really a screamer. He did a little bit, but it seems like on the new singles at least, he's experimenting with it a lot more.
And he's such a good example of working with the skill that you have and the what he's got. Like, you know, I mean, their music is so diverse, but it's also very consistent. You know, he uses the very similar tone in most of his songs. But it's great because he gets creative with what he does have. And it's just, it's a great example of what I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, whatever sounds that you create, I'm sure like the majority of people are going to like, I know I'm going to love it for sure. But look, this podcast is getting long. We're hour 24 minutes.
I'm a talker.
I like it. Yeah. Oh man, it's better than not being a talker. It's like, so don't worry. I love it. But we're going to end the segment with like just a couple more questions. These are just the fun, easy questions. So I got top 3 favorite bands.
Right now, Spiritbox, obviously. System of a Down. And you know what? Deadlights. They're an Australian band.
Yeah, they're sick.
They're not huge.
Uncanny Valley or something? Yeah,
the Uncanny Valley is one of my favorite albums of all time. They have they know too, because I I spoke with them when we were in Brisbane last, and I just said, when I met them for the first time like a year ago or something, and I said, you just have to know how much that album means to me. And they're like, oh, thanks so much. It's really, they're the best. But yeah, there you go. That's 3.
Yeah, they're sweet. Okay, how about like non-metal? 3 non-metal artists you like?
Okay. Coldplay.
Oh.
They've been a huge staple in my life forever, and they always will be.
Have you checked out? You must have checked out Coloratura, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, do you mean the single Coloratura or the Music of the Spheres album?
I heard the Music of the Spheres album is not that good, so I checked out Coloratura.
Coloratura is my favorite song on it easily, but it's not the best album. But I still love them. I don't really care. They'll always be a favorite for me, and it's more their earlier stuff, but I adore them. Coldplay, not so much bands. Doja Cat.
Oh, Doja Cat's good.
She's brilliant. I love her so much.
Yeah.
And probably Radiohead.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Coldplay, Radiohead. I love the Brits.
But also Doja Cat too. Like out of pop music, Doja Cat's awesome, I think. But I'm not too well versed in pop. But Radiohead, thank you. My community makes fun of me for liking Radiohead.
Oh, no, they're the best. They're brilliant. I love Radiohead.
I think they are brilliant too. I think Paranoid Android is like one of the coolest songs ever written. Personally.
I completely agree.
This is why I like your music. Explain.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Look, there's influence coming in from everywhere.
Okay, I have another one here because I think you posted on like a TikTok or something, but like your top 3 favorite movies.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm very much a movie buff. This is going to be difficult. I'm going to go off right now as well, like just in my sphere. Oh no, I can go of all time. Okay. Whiplash. Have you seen Whiplash?
So good. So good.
So good.
Intense.
So good. Yes, very intense. I love a good intense one. Going a little left of field, The Sound of Music.
Okay.
Always will adore that movie. Julie Andrews is the queen. She's the best. And I'm gonna go a newer one. It may not make the movies of all time list, but it might. Everything Everywhere All at Once.
So that like stole the Oscars, didn't it?
Oh, it swept hard, and I'm stoked because it's just brilliant. Have you seen it?
No, not yet. Jamie Lee Curtis? She's in it?
Oh yeah, she's such a random character, but she's good.
Oh,
everyone else is better though.
I've seen the trailer for it. I'm like, this looks so weird. Like I'm intrigued, but I just never got around to it.
Sit down and like be ready for an experience. Turn the lights off. So good.
I think I might watch it tonight. Why not?
You'll cry.
I'll cry? Yeah, it's that kind of... Okay. I thought it was like more goofy.
If you have mommy issues, you'll cry.
Did you just admit something over there?
No, I don't. I love my mom. It's the best.
All right. I'll keep that in mind when I watch it. So we're going to end the segment. I just snorted. Top 3 favorite foods.
Oh, I love Italian food, so I love pasta. I think that's a good one. Actually, this tiny little side story. When we were last in Melbourne for a show, actually not last in Melbourne, but the time before that for a show, my friends from Gloom in the Corner. Do you know the Gloom in the Corner?
Oh yeah, they're great. They're very nice to me too. Mikey's awesome.
Like our best friends. They're so beautiful. But Paul from Gloom, he was like, you've only come to Melbourne for shows. You never actually spend time in Melbourne. Let me take you. He took the band to this Italian pasta like bar thing. It was really good. Oh my god, best ever. So whatever I had that day, that's in my top favorite foods list. But also just the Melbourne atmosphere made it better.
Yeah.
I also love Mexican food. So I love a good taco. There's a really good place about 30 minutes from my house that does like really authentic Mexican food. The people are so nice. It's just this tiny little restaurant. It's amazing. So that's number 2. And I don't know. I'm not a big foodie.
No? Everyone's a foodie.
I mean, who doesn't love food?
Wow, this is the hard question for you. Talking about
I suddenly forget every food I've ever eaten. Oh, I really like
talking about misogyny in the scene, and she ready with that one, but then talking about food. Oh no.
That's exactly how my brain works. I don't know. I do have a bit of a sweet tooth sometimes. Like, okay, like we'll add a dessert in here. Favorite dessert would probably be like a really good cookie, like a really good chocolate chip cookie.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Had to add something like that in the mix there.
It's a good answer. This is the same questions that I ask every guest. Why is this
a hard question?
I know, the food. Oh no. Cookies are great. They're great.
Best.
Yeah, the podcast, hour 30 minutes. Look, I knew I was going to have a good time talking to you. Ended up being better than I expected. But yeah, Mon, is there anything that you want to say before we close out the podcast? Anything you'd like to plug?
I just want to say, I'm going to get emotional for a minute. Thank you so much for giving our band so much attention and really championing us. The first reaction video you ever made was already exciting, and you've made a couple now, and we've shared them with everyone we know. It's just like the support you give us is just beautiful, and we really, I don't know, let's stay friends. This is fun.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I'm just making content, and it's like a weird win-win scenario, right? Like I just want to show off the bands that I think are exciting, and you guys are for sure up there.
We love our METALBIRB fans. Like they comment on our videos, they comment on our posts saying, "Oh, METALBIRB brought me here," and it's like I love it. So,
hell yeah,
you've made a big impact, and it means a lot. But that's all I had to say, really. Thank you so much.
Your plug was just plugging me. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
But I will say, stay tuned for Relica's future. I cannot wait for this album. If it comes out this year, that'd be amazing. But if it comes out next year, I can be patient. But I cannot wait to hear it. Again, thank you, Mon. I am going to close it out. You enjoy the rest of your day. It's still morning over there, so yeah, it's like overnight. Yeah. It's like nighttime. I'm about to go to bed soon, so.
You want to enjoy everything everywhere all at once.
Oh yeah, I gotta do that. I will for sure. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Take care, Mon.
I'll catch you soon.